I'm starting my lecture with this great personality in botany literature. I hope already it is labeled Carl Linnaeus. Uh, why I'm starting with Carl Linnaeus instead of Harshberger, father of ethnobotany? All of you studied Harshberger is a father of ethnobotany, but I'm not starting my lecture with Harshberger. He is not important to me. But as Carl Linnaeus, he is much more important to me as an ethnobotanist. In fact, I would say he is the first ethnobotanist of the world. He is the first ethnobotanist of the world who studied ethnobotany in his own country, Sweden, where he moved up in the north and studied a tribe called Sami tribe, Sami, Sami tribe. And very interestingly, the way he collected information, the way he probably made notes from his field trips is something great, which we don't do it now. And that is why I start my lecture from him. I would say he is the guru in ethnobotany. So what we do in ethnobotany? What is ethnobotany after all? Ethnobotany is something, what we do is we take information which is existing in the private domain, which is among the tribal groups, among the tribal chiefs, private domain, and bring it to the public domain. Right? Something what is hidden within them, or at least stored within their mind, stored within their culture, we try to tap it and bring it to the public domain. Right? Is that right or wrong? It's a big debate. Are we doing correct things or wrong? It's a debate, should be debated for a long time. It's a very big debate, very big ethical debate. The large number of people who argue, because I also joined that group, we should not bring it to public domain, though we have ethical guidelines that you should have code of ethics, you should get their prior informed consent, all these things. Nobody does it these days. Right? So, whether we should bring it to the public domain, it's a question. It's a question to be answered by all of you who do ethnobotany. Are we doing right when we bring the private information into the public domain? It's a question to be answered. Right? For whom we are doing it? Because we get PhD degree, no doubt. But for our PhD degree, can we rob their information and put it in the public domain? Right? So that's an ethical question to be answered. Ethnobotany from its history has changed the way that we look at it now. Right? Look at it then. Because if you look at ethnobotany of older days, up to the Jain period, I would say, or even beyond Jain period, even now, we are looking at ethnobotany only from the utilitarian point of view. What are the plants that are used by a particular tribe or a community? Right? So that is what we are interested. We are interested like highly selective information from the community. We look at only botany there. We forget the first word ethno. When we do the field survey, we always conveniently forget the first word ethno. We are very much stuck to the second word botany. So are we doing ethnobotany then? Right? Are we doing ethnobotany or studying only botany of the tribes? That's again a question to be answered and question to be thought by you all. Okay. And now it has changed. The concepts have changed. Ever since the modern ethnobiologists have come into the force, the entire concept has changed. It is not only with tribal groups. It is with every group. Anybody you can study ethnobotany. That's why it is, even with your friend, you can do an ethnobotany. With a person who probably works in the universities as a menial staff, as a sweeper, or somebody else, you can do ethnobotany with them. Right? And on the street vendors, you can do ethnobotany with them. The large number of people with whom you can work ethnobotany, they are all information rich. Information rich. So that is what we are now, the boundaries of ethnobotany is expanding. It is not restricted to tribes or rural areas. It is expanding like anything. Have you ever thought of doing an ethnobotanical study with someone in the city? Or ever try to do an ethnobotanical study, someone who comes to a nursery and buys a plant, maybe buys dozens of plants? Have you ever tried, at least thought of this is also ethnobotanical study? Anybody thought of this? Is this an ethnobotanical study? This is a study. Why people buy certain plants, why people buy certain colors of plants, why people buy certain types of plants, what is how psychology influences, what kind of preferences they have. All these things are also important to study. It's all part of ethnobotany, right? It's urban ethnobotany. If you look at your rooftop gardens or probably balcony gardens, what kind of plants you stack there, you store there, right? Easy to grow or colorful plants or only flowering plants. What kind of plants you probably grow there? That's also part of ethnobotany. We never attempted some of these things. We still stuck to the old routine of trying to go through the plants, of trying to go through the areas and trying to do some kind of ethnobotany which is not at all suiting to the modern thing. Then earlier we were restricting only tribes. Now today it includes all human societies. It's not just tribes, all human societies. The changes have also come in the terminology. When we talk about ethnobotany, we talk about community knowledge. We talk about, right? We talk about knowledge or ethnic knowledge, whatever it is. Those terms are getting changed now. If you look at modern papers that are coming, they don't talk about such terms. They talk about community knowledge. Because when you talk about tribal knowledge, sometimes it's derogatory. Sometimes it is restricted to one particular sense. When you talk about community, because communities are communities in any place they are. So a community knowledge is a better adapted term to our studies now. And local knowledge, we also use another term, local knowledge, because it's restricted to a locality. What you find in one part of Goa is not the same knowledge what you find in another part of Goa. We have never tried to compare these kind of two different localities or two different communities and try to study, right? So there are some books and some studies have happened, but they are not being done in a true spirit. But this is the difference between us and between them, right? Who are the them? If you look at other countries outside India, mostly it is done by anthropologists and sociologists who do this study. Because they understand, because we are working on human communities. We are not only working on plant communities. We are not doing a botanical study. Just go outside, collect plants and classify and write a thesis. You are working with human communities. When you work with human communities, you should be sure of certain regulations, how to interfere, how to talk to them, how to interact with them, how to record them. There are guidelines that are available. I don't think anywhere these guidelines are taught. In India, particularly in India, these guidelines are not at all taught in anywhere. We don't have any universities or even other research organizations which evolved a guideline. Whether it's taught or not, evolving a guideline for the researchers. It's not available, including Ethnobotanical Society of India, right? Not just universities. Ethnobotanical Society of India, Botanical Survey of India, or NBRI, all these research, even TBGRI, all these research organizations, they do a lot of ethnobotanical studies, but they've never evolved a guideline for researchers. How to approach, how to deal with. We simply push a student to the community, you go and work with this community, as if it's your father's property, right? It is not right. Yes, it's right to share or shelve the information. You cannot force him to talk. Suppose somebody comes into your home and asks you how much salary you get. Would you be willing to share? You will not. It is the same way that we are doing. Set someone, student, you go do a work this tribe, go into this tribe, start collecting information. Fine. And we have not given any training to the students. Any kind of training to the students. How to approach, how to extract information, how to document information, what kind of questions that we can ask, are there any sensitive issues not to be asked. We don't give any training to the students. Anywhere in India, not only in this university, anywhere in India. So it's the same thing which sometimes annoys me when I look at students, when I look at other people, and how do we do right ethnobotany? That's my question. Right. India, of course, it's predominantly botanist. Botanists think they know everything. Right? Unfortunately, that's the mindset of ethnobotanists, if not other kinds of botanists. They know everything. They know about human communities. They know about everything. So they can simply go into and jump into the field and start collecting information. It is not collecting like flowers. or it is not collecting, buying a market good. It is not that way. We have to think. The ethnobotany applications, though I put it traditional knowledge, it's basically ethnobotany. There are a large number of applications today that it is applied to. In fact, we derive large number of benefits from the knowledge that these tribes and rural communities have. All these are things that are we derive from. In fact, large number of examples in each one of the category. So I'm not going to give examples. You can look into the books. There are enough number of books that describe about these things. So right from pharmaceuticals, that's one of the major area where, and that's why we excessively focused on medicinal plants. Indian ethnobotany excessively focused on medicinal plants, right? Not to the other aspects. And botanical medicines, transgenic crops, anything, pharmaceuticals, personal care medicines, right? In fact, when in the NBA, Laurel sends application to get our knowledge on two issues. One is skin care and hair care. They want to know what kind of plants that we use, right? So they apply for access, and we do provide access based on certain conditions. So that is the interest that other companies, leading companies, have on our plants, on our knowledge, right? Why? They think there is something in it. They can come out with a product and market it. Maybe sometime later, I don't know, a product that you may get out of Albizia amara or any of the plants as a good shampoo. It's already a good shampoo in Indian communities, used by commonly by people. But whereas for them, if you make into a product, you sell for a very high profit. But when you use simply a leaf powder, it is not a high profitable business. In a global scenario, outside India, right? I simply put it this way, outside India, what are the things that are being studied in ethnobotany? Look at that. Studies on folk classification. I don't know how many theses have come out from different universities on folk classification, right? I'm not seen in many numbers of such studies. How people look at classification? I think only botanists probably have the right to classify, right? But people also can classify. People classify on a different ways based on different criteria. It is not like what we classify, trees, shrubs, herbs, or things like that. But they have a way of classifying, and that classification is very much useful to them in their community. So with that classification, they can arrive at a resource very easily and can teach to the next generation very easily. So we are not trying to do much of this kind of studies. Quantitative ethnobiology, those are some people who are doing it. How much being collected, how much being probably traded. So all these things. And knowledge patterns. I have not also come across any good thesis or any good papers on this. In what way knowledge occurs in a society, in a community? Knowledge patterns. What kind of knowledge a woman has? Though we have approached this problem from a dimension of gender, right? There are a large number of books and papers that are available. Gender and knowledge. But gender is one part of community. Gender is not the entire community. But other patterns. Have you ever thought children also have a knowledge in a tribal community? Do children have knowledge? Or like our city children, they know only LKG, pre-KG, they know only ABCD? No. So children also have their knowledge because they live with the nature. They live in the nature. They live with the nature. So they also develop several things. And that is important. We have never done these studies. Health. What impact their knowledge had on health? And how it has changed the way they look at health? And what impacts of outside inputs change their perceptions? Right. We have no idea. And biodiversity prospecting. Though this is a decade-old practice, prospecting means bringing out the hidden aspects of utility into the public. And many of the countries elsewhere, they have done excellent work with biodiversity prospecting. In the sense, they even developed a models out of biodiversity prospecting, how to prospect, what kind of information that we are going to prospect, all these things. They developed models. They developed agreements between communities and the institutions. I don't think anywhere in India, without my knowledge, maybe there are few institutions. Then I don't think there is any one institution in India have ever developed a kind of an agreement with the community to do biodiversity prospecting. Maybe some of you might know. For me, it's simply not existing. Right? Okay. Ethnopharmacology. This is often happening. Like this one area, because of interest in medicinal plants, interest in applied aspects of medicinal plants, we are trying to do this ethnopharmacology. And market links. That is also completely missing. Market links in the sense, there are number of products that we are trading. For example, pumpkins that are sold on the road, right, from the rural areas, they cultivate and bring it to the road and sell it. And you don't know how they come from a place and they are sold in a place, and how all it travels, and how all it is being used, and what are the different areas it is being used. Today, pumpkin seeds have become a major resource, health resource. If you go to any of the health shops, they sell pumpkin seeds as a health food. So there are a large number of utility products that are being developed. So we have not cared to look at, right, the greens, wild greens. What kind of wild greens the guava has? What is its nutrient profile? Have we ever tried to work on this nutrient profile of wild greens, right? So we tried to do a project in near Madurai, one of the hills. We documented nearly some 35 wild greens being used by the tribe. 35 wild greens, 35 right, species of wild greens, which means imagine the richness of the diversity of the food. Whereas for us, it's only just 3 or 4. Our diversity of food is reduced much. We don't have much diversity. Okay. So I think conservation issues, they also is very beneficial. Perceptions. What kind of perception they have about nature? Right? What kind of perception they have about the markets? What kind of perceptions they have about trade? Right? Perceptions are very important. Now, institutions are evaluated based on perceptions. Right? Suppose I want to estimate Goa University's rank. One of the ways is perception. How people think about Goa University. Whether people around are nearby states, whether they put it on a high rank or low rank. What are the features they appreciate? What are the features probably they don't appreciate? This is a perception based. Perception based is highly used in today's evaluation. We never use perceptions of communities to evaluate their knowledge. I've already told you Indian scenario is excessively documenting only medicinal plant knowledge. You look at any of the papers, I'll show you statistics. Overemphasis on economic uses and particularly on medicinal plants. Right? If you look at thesis that is probably stored in your library or any other library, they start, of course, they have every other plant uses in their thesis, but if you look at excessively about medicinal plants, I don't know why this fascination about medicinal plants. And in spite of doing it, have they come out of any wonder drug out of the documentation? No. We simply document. And we simply, of course, not analyzing even what we have documented. So what is the purpose of such documentations? That we should ask ourselves. Right. Comparative studies. This is called cross-cultural studies or comparative studies. There are very few studies on this area. Suppose a tribe here, let's say towards Karnataka border, uses a plant for a purpose. And across Karnataka, they don't know about this purpose. They may be using it for a totally different purpose. Why suddenly within a few hundred kilometers, the use changes? Is there any reason? Or simply they have not come across such uses? What is the reason why the use is changing of use? We never try to probe into these questions. If you probe into the question, there may be a lot of cultural issues that may be cropping up. Right? We never address these issues. And this is where we should do a real kind of ethnobotany. Comparative studies, ethnopharmacology. Of course, now people are more interested in ethnopharmacology. Anybody who collects a plant immediately goes to a lab, try to extract chemical and try to do something. But we put a full stop. After extracting a chemical, they say, I found this unique chemical or I find these chemicals in this plant. This may be responsible for the action. That's all. But how these chemicals are useful in treating a disease? Are there modern equivalents in the chemistry? We have never tried to address these issues. And other thing is, in fact, we are opening up our research to others to use. If we end there, say these are the chemicals I found in a plant and these are the chemicals, active molecules I recorded from a plant, you are opening up your research. Anybody else can pick up a clue from your research and try to come out with a marketable product. That is possible. Many of the ethnobotanical theses have done this mistake. They have not done a complete research. They stop somewhere in the middle and say this, because for them, it's the degree that matters. Many of the researchers, it's the degree that matters, not the study that matters. Study is only part of the degree, right? So degree is not something very important here. You should try to understand you are evaluating a plant from the tribal perspective and trying to find out something good in their culture and trying to extract something good from their culture and trying to give a modern way of producing a drug. So we never try to do this. It's like opening your tiffin box and leaving it. Anybody can come and eat, right? It may be a dog, it may be your friend, or it may be a crow, anything. It doesn't matter. You are not bothered. I've done my duty, I've got my PhD, that's enough for me. You are not bothered what happens to your own data, right? How many are really bothered like this after your PhD? It will be very difficult to answer for any one of you, Okay. So what are the ethical issues in this? That is misuse. We do only economic botany. We have never done an ethnobotany. That word ethno is missing always in ethnobotany, particularly from Indian perspective, right? And those who have been following Manipur trouble essentially evolved with Kuki tribes and other major tribal community. Kuki tribes, have you ever read, there is a book that is presented to me by a Kuki tribe person. The way they documented the Kuki's knowledge is really, really fascinating. You try to look at that book. Fantastically done, fantastic drawings, small drawings, and excellently documented book. Every aspect of Kuki culture is documented. But we don't do that. In fact, we don't go to near to the culture. We don't want culture. We want only the use. Right? If particular tribe uses a certain type of pumpkin, why the community uses only that type of pumpkin? Is there any other use, or is there anywhere else it is different? We never try to approach these issues from the other point of view. That's what. For us, plants plus uses, that's the equation for us. Plants plus uses is equal to ethnobotany. Right? That is our ethnobotany. Do you agree? Right? I hope you agree. Look at the statistics. More than 800 papers published from 1956 to 2016, that's a very large period, discuss only medicine uses. No other aspect has been discussed in these papers. That means we are excessively focusing on medicinal knowledge. We use certain terminologies which are age-old. They are highly biased terminologies. These terminologies should be phased out or should be changed from the ethnobotanical literature, language. One is we use informants. Informants means it's very, very degraded terminology for me. Sometimes you use it in the police terminology. He's a police informant. You never respect a police informant, right? Either the people there or the police there, they never respect a police. He's a spy. Do you mean to say tribal informants are spies? Right? So that terminology is not a civilized terminology. Resource persons, though it is a little moderately okay terminology. What do you mean by resource is something which is there, of course, yes. Resource person, the word resource itself makes the knowledge as a commodity. Right? The word resource to me denotes a commodity. You are treating his knowledge as a commodity. Is it right? Can you treat his knowledge? Suppose, can I treat your knowledge as a commodity? Right? When you treat his knowledge as a commodity, you are trying to, at least you are forcing him to trade. A commodity can be traded. Right? A commodity can be traded. So, is that the right way of approach? Can you trade his knowledge, right, for your PhD or for whatever it is? So that is one area of terminology problem. There are alternate terminologies. We have practiced in many of our theses. One is about for informants or resource persons. We are trying to call knowledge holders or sharers, knowledge sharers. Right? Just like in a business, there are two partners, working partner and a knowledge partner, right? Or financial partner. Here, you are a research partner and they are the resource partner. And that is knowledge partner. So why don't you call them as partners in your studies? They are partners, in fact. They are important partners in your study. We don't want to give them an equal status. How many of you agree to call them as the partners in the study? Right? We don't want to give them an equal status. We still live in that period where we differentiate them as menial people and we are higher people, so that we don't want to give them any equal status. Right? Agree? Okay. Good. And another term we often misuse is indigenous people. Right? Indigenous people. You know, of course, many papers have appeared. Indigenous knowledge. What is indigenous knowledge? And who is indigenous person? All of us are indigenous person. Is there anyone who is not indigenous here unless there is an abroad person? Right? All of us are indigenous person. If you look at the migration patterns of people into India from Africa, all of us have migrated long ago. All of us are indigenous people. There is no way that you are different and I am different. Maybe genetically there is some very minor differences. But otherwise, we are all same. We all come from Africa. There is no doubt. Research has proved it. When we have migrated, what period we have settled in here, those issues may be different. Some people may put it few centuries before. Some people may want to call it as few centuries after. That's up to it's a deviation point to be settled. Even that will be settled. Because research is like that. It creates a controversy, it settles it. It doesn't leave it open. Okay. Look at this. If you call probably a population in Australia, there is a perfect terminology. Indigenous people or indigenous communities. It's a perfect terminology. Same thing with North America. It's a perfect terminology. Indigenous people and indigenous communities. Because there is a definite period of migration and definite period of settlement. So, but in India, do you know when you and I have settled here? Is there any knowledge? Is there any framework? Right? When do we settle here? We don't know. Everybody else, just like a tribe who's there in the Western Ghats, just like a person who lives in the Goa, everybody is indigenous. There is no one that is not indigenous. Right? So this term should be addressed differently. Okay. I think that. This is one area which we are completely missing in our research. Ethics of documentation. Everything has ethics. And if you do your research ethically, you are appreciated worldwide. You receive recognition worldwide. It is not something that you know only from Goa, you are appreciated. How many of us follow research ethics in ethnobotany? Right? Suppose there are 10 people in your lab. If you keep your notes of your research observations on the table, one of your lab mates, I hope it doesn't happen, one of your lab mates simply takes that paper, take a photograph, these days photographs only, no photocopy, takes a photograph and uses your data for something else. Would you appreciate that? Right? You say it is unethical. How can he or she steal my data? You make a vehement fight, right? Very strong fight to establish the data is yours. The same thing also should be applied to the tribal knowledge. It is not something that is always possible to steal, and if you don't acknowledge, we are stealing the data, right? And that is where several organizations in the world, none from India, right? Again, I have to point out, none from India have ever came out with a framework of how to document a knowledge. Knowledge can be documented in many ways, right? Suppose I'm talking to you, you're receiving information. This is also probably just an audio documentation. It is not, you're not making any notes or you're not making any recording. This is also documentation, right? So, on what basis you can ask for a knowledge from a person who is illiterate? No, that word is also should be very derogative nowadays. So, who is not educated and who is not known to the worldly things, and how do we establish? How do you probably communicate to him and get his knowledge? It's a question to be asked. And there are a number of organizations in the world, like American Anthropological Association, International Society of Ethnobiologists, Society of Economic Botany, Association of Systematic Collections, the Food and FAO, and American Society of Pharmacognosy. All are different organizations. None of them are in the botany, typical botany scenario. Right? There is no botanical organization that is here. Right? And that doesn't mean all botanists are unethical. Right? But how come they've evolved a norm to document the knowledge? Not only norms of documenting knowledge, also modes and methods of documenting the knowledge. They train researchers. They don't simply push the person into the pond, you learn swimming. Right? They train the students in every aspect of knowledge. And they ask them to conduct mock interviews. They record the mock interviews, show it to the student. See what are the mistakes that you are making in asking a question. What is your body posture? Your body posture will also threaten the person outside, and he may not divulge the information that you want. So what kind of body posture you have? What kind of language you use? What kind of question tags you place? Right? Question tags that you place. All these are important in ethnobiology. Unfortunately, we don't give any damn attention to these things. Have you been trained anywhere? Did you attend any training practices? No. Right? Unfortunately, trainings that are given also doesn't look into these things. They tell you how to record information, and how to methodically record information. That's all the training is given. They don't look into these practices. It is very important. Yeah. This is a sample kind of code of ethics that different organizations have. I don't have to read it. You can look at, for example, the International Society of Ethnobiology, what kind of codes of ethics they have. Right? One is principles. One is, most important thing is PIC, prior informed consent, and veto. If a person wants to say no to record my information, you should not disturb him. You should leave it. You should leave him just like that. You should not disturb, pester and get the information. Right? Or pay and get the information. The other way that our researchers are used to is pay and get the information. We are useful to pay modes and getting information. Whatever, whether it's a taluk office or tribal information, we do the same thing. Pay mode. Right? So that is not something ethical. Okay? Likewise, every organization, and they are also talking about researcher behavior. What kind of behavior you exhibit to the person, the tribals? So, are we exhibiting the right behavior? And that is where the mock interviews comes in. So, we don't probably look into all these aspects, and but still we practice ethnobotany. In India, only honeybee. No institutions have developed any code of ethics. whether it's BSI or ZSI, all of them do research with tribes, right? Or NBRI or TBGRI or universities, many universities, all of them do. In ASI, Anthropological Society of India, all of them do research with tribes. But none of them have got any code of ethics. Why? It is simply taken for granted. It is simply taken for granted. When Dr. Jain launched an ethnobiology project, he should develop at that point of time, but unfortunately he didn't. So he has also simply taken it for granted. The information is available for free. Why should we unnecessarily bother ourselves? Right? And that's the attitude, of course, still exists with many of the researchers. In fact, I happened to speak to some of the pioneering researchers in Tamil Nadu who published papers in ethnobotany. As a young fellow, that time I was a young fellow, I asked them, "Sir, how did you interact with tribes? Is it not difficult for you to interact?" He said simply, "Arey, it is easy. I just pay one measure of rice. You will say he uses." So it's a trade-off. One measure of rice will give you one paper. Right? Is that ethnobotany? That for one measure of rice, he may say anything. Right? For the first measure, he may say some truth. Second measure, oh, you are getting more. So that means you want more. Pay me more. I'll speak more. That's the kind of attitude they develop. It is not at all ethical. Okay. Right. Suppose in your lab, you are working with a research partner and both of you work equally together. One of you published a paper without acknowledging you, your role, whatever may be your role. Would you appreciate that? Would you appreciate that? How many of you say it's okay, she's only my friend or he's only my friend, so she can or he can have the right to steal? No matter. How many of you say that? Nobody will say that because you establish your right there. Likewise, is there any paper that acknowledges tribals' contribution to the paper? No paper. Very rarely, I have not seen any papers, even thesis. Who is the resource person who shared the information with you? Who is the knowledge partner who shared the information with you? No. Sometimes our scientific attitudes also encourage this. When we send papers to very leading journals of ethnobotany, they cut out some information. What kind of information? They don't want any information on knowledge partners. For them, it may be a problem because when somebody uses from the open journal, anybody can go to court. So that's an issue. They don't want any knowledge partner information. They want only the useful information. So that is also encouraging this kind of trends. This is another big issue. Majority of the publication do not provide prior informed consent. That means when you go to a community, you should document these things and with the consent, with the people consent. And either mostly written consent is welcomed, right? And the consent should be written in a language that both of you know, not that only in English, right? And it should be signed by the community member. Then that means you are doing it ethically. We have not done it. We have not done it. And the consent should be written in the local language, right? If you are doing it in the Goa, it should be written in a language that is known to most of the Goans, not in Marathi. Okay. You may be familiar with Marathi, but that is not the way to do it. How can the other person, local person, read Marathi here? So it should be addressed. We should think of these things. Is there anyone who has written a prior informed consent in the research with the communities? No. Okay. There are simple guidelines which I thought I'll give you. How do you proceed? Right? How do you proceed in doing a research work in ethnobotany? Decide your topic. Your topic can be decided based on a plan group. For example, this morning I was talking to a group of students. One of the students said, I'm working on apocinaceae and its uses. That's based on a plan group. Or ethnic community. Ethnic community may be of a particular region or a particular community. Right? Anything. or geographical location, maybe northern Goa or central Goa or this particular reserve forest. So geographical location. So you can divide, you can demarcate your area in any of these lines. Gather detailed secondary literature. Before you launch your study, before you go into the field, detailed secondary literature must be documented. There are a number of sources, number of books, number of gazetteers. Please try to address, study them, and understand from these literatures. Without a basic knowledge of what is already known or what is already documented, you jumping into the field and bringing in the same thing again is not a research. It's a waste, time waste. And look for gaps in the study. If earlier studies have done, there are few studies. What are the gaps in the study? How do you fill these gaps? That is your contribution. Make a reconnaissance survey. Right? If your area is something, you reconnaissance survey. I mean, go the entire area, just meet few people here and there, try to know what is available in the field, what is the knowledge level. That's the reconnaissance survey, not a very in-depth study initially. Choose your knowledge partners. That is extremely difficult job, but extremely important job. Choosing your knowledge partner should be really correct. If you choose a knowledge partner who will say anything for money, then you are doomed. So don't do that. And get written consent, written prior informed consent. Right? Record information in local language so that they can also understand. Curate the information, not simply recording. After recording, you should curate the information, whether any repetition, whether he has said it right way or whether it's a wrong language is used, wrong terminology is used. You curate the information. Then share the curated information with the community. You should share back. Not that you recorded and put in the thesis. That is highly unethical. You should share back to the community. Call the community and tell them this is what we have recorded from you in all these days of interaction and whether we can share it to the others. You get their consent. Right? You get their consent. So that is the right way of doing. In fact, when we were working in Javadi Hills in Tamil Nadu, we called the community after doing our research and shared what all we gathered from them. Asked the people, can we share it to the others? Or can we bring it as a book for you to know, for your next generation to know? I thought initially they will come. But to my surprise, many of the community, no, don't share. Don't share it to us. Because you may share it as a book today. Tomorrow, one of our own community members go to city and he may sell this for his own profit. Don't share. That's their perception. Right? So we respected the perception, of course, did not share. We also did not publish any papers out of it. It was a difficult decision to make. Okay. Language, that is important. Another area which we loosely do it is also misused many times. When a tribal person reports to us, this plant is used for a chest pain. What is our immediate interaction in terms of translation? It is with regard to heart disease. Right? Chest pain need not always indicate heart disease. Have you ever gone to a doctor and consulted, these are the symptoms the people say, and what do these symptoms mean in modern medicine? Have you ever consulted this? These are loose terms. Chest pain, stomach pain are loose terms. Stomach pain due to a number of reasons. Maybe gastritis, maybe ulceritis, or maybe any other issues in the stomach. Anything. It could be liver problem, anything. How can we generally say stomach problem means it is this? And many of the theses have done this. Many of the ethnobotanical data actually has superficially translated this. They never consulted a physician, and we also never ask for symptoms. When somebody says this is being used for a particular disease or even a headache, we never ask for details. What do you mean by headache? Which side of the head? How intense it is? Whether it is probing, whether it's throbbing pain. We never ask for details. We simply note a headache. Headache is something, our headache is over. When you record, our headache is over. It is not the way to record. Right? You should ask for symptoms, note down the symptoms. If possible, go with a doctor who's friendly to you. Go with the doctor and let him identify what is this condition. so that you are at least scientifically accurate. Many of our ethnobotanical studies, particularly on medicinal plants, scientific accuracy very, very less. We take it for granted some superficial similarities. Okay. Folk classification, I think I quickly go through this. I don't know whether I have time to go in a detailed manner. Another 10 minutes, right? Satishji, another 10 minutes there, because I also should not eat into your time. Right? Okay. See, folk classification, though we say we have a very good folk classification in Ayurveda, and that's why if you look into some books, immediately they go back to Ayurveda and say, we have divided plants into these categories. All these things are already there. Right? And many literature exists on this matter. But have we gone beyond that? What kind of technically precise way of addressing classification? Have we developed a method? No. We stopped. Once for us, once it occurs in Ayurveda, and that's all. That's the end of it. Indians already know it. Right? Indians already know it. So we don't have to study about it. That's always our perception. That's always our psychology. Ayurveda is not all, though it is important. So we have to look beyond those days and look into these days. So what is this classification means? Whether it is matching closer to the classification that we know. Right? Are there any words of dicards and monocards? Are family systems? Are any other concepts that we know in the modern classification? Are we using them? Right? So these things we never looked into. And to my knowledge, I have not seen a good thesis on folk classification. Right? Or even part of ethnobotanic thesis, folk classification is probably dealt. Okay. Of course, the entire system comes from Bernd Berlin, an anthropologist, American anthropologist called Bernd Berlin, who was in Michigan University. He developed this system. And like we have the kingdom, genus, family, species, he also developed certain categories. Unique beginner. Unique beginner means which encompasses the entire thing. For example, plants. Plants means all kinds of plants. Animals means all kinds of animals. That is a unique beginner. So they have a word for unique beginner. And life form. Because you and I use life form. Folk genus. You never call it as genus. It's folk genus. Because folk genus is completely different from what we use in botany as a genus. Folk species. And folk variety. So he developed these categories of folk classification and tried to address the folk classification. Sorry. We should understand these two terminologies. I do not know how many of you come across these two terminologies. Emic categories and etic categories. These two are anthropological terms. They are not botanical terms, though we don't teach. But we study ethnobotany. We study ethnobotany, but we don't study anthropological terms that are highly useful in ethnobotany. See, emic categories. Emic categories recognized by people, the sense, right? And etic categories are recognized by scholars, right? Recognized by scholars. That is like you and I. Okay. And these two categories should be studied when you study the folk classification. For example, we did a study for one of the group of plants called Pala in Palai in Tamil, Pala in Malayalam. The word Palai refers to a group of plants many of them are xerophytes, many of them are latex. So there are certain common characteristics between these plants. So why do they group? Sometimes they are unrelated families, not only one or two families, unrelated families. Why do people group them into one common folk term called Pala? We tried to look at this uniqueness and we came out with the parameters based on which they are being grouped. Such studies are very rare in our literature, right? And for that, you also need a language expertise, or at least tie up with a language expert. Right? We never try to bring others into our study. We always do isolated studies. What if I study only, I should study. Maybe I can take my friends to the field, but he is not partner of my study. Right? So that kind of attitude will never end up in a good study. So we should be able to freely discuss these things with experts from whichever language it is, and try to develop some general conclusions. We are very poor at this. Emic category. This is the category used by people. And this category is one thing that embraces concept of ICAS. You know what is ICAS? Because all our biology students here, ICAS generally means, what is ICAS? ICAS is home. Right? Home. Your ecology comes from that. Your economy comes from that word ICAS. Okay. And the ICAS concept embeds cultural values and conservation values of the communities, of the people. It is not by scientists. Not somebody from UNESCO comes and conserves your plants. It is people. Okay. Ethic categories. What we use in science. All your dicards, monocards, malvaceae, all these are ethic categories. The ethic categories, they have certain criteria. It is universal. You can use it anywhere. You can use it in Goa, or you can use it elsewhere in US or Europe. They are same. If you say Malvaceae here in Goa, Malvaceae elsewhere in any part of the world, it is understood in the same manner. There is no way that it is misunderstood. And it's objective. These criteria are very, very objective. Right? They are no subjective. Problem solving capacity. Because if you find something new, if you want to classify, you can put it in the classification anywhere, because it is an order, structured order. I'm telling one example of ethic and emic category, how the categories look differently and try to understand differently. We try to study the forest types. How do people perceive forest types? We have been studying forest types right from our school days. Right? Though not in detail, but at least when we come to MSc, we study the champion and safe classification. So when our researchers went there, I asked them to evaluate what kind of forest types are there. They came up with only 4 or 5 categories. That is this evergreen, semi-evergreen, dry deciduous, things like that. And in total, champion say 16 major forest types are there, that you all know. But when we asked people, they recognized 85 different forest types. 85 different forest types. How come suddenly probably it enlarged numbers like that? Their way of understanding a forest is totally different. Not like our whether leaf falls or leaf retains. Right? They are not bothered about that. For them, it is utility importance. Look at the way they are. It may be based on direction. This plant occurs in the southern forest. Or landscape features. This plant occurs in the forest where there are a large number of rocky boulders. That is important for them. Cultural features. This part is important where there is a sacred forest is there. And utility. This is a forest where we cut our firewood from this. It's a dry forest. So they classify forest based on several of these features, what is useful for their daily life. It's a daily life. Right? Unlike us, they have to be in the forest, they have to use the forest on a daily basis. So that is the kind of thing which is we need to understand from the people, not other things. We could not superimpose this onto earlier one. Okay. Similarly, we have also done a study on millets. Millets, particularly this study is from Wayanad. The Swaminathan Foundation has done a study. There are a number of folk varieties in the millets. And each folk variety of millet, they have certain criteria to recognize them. And we studied all these characters. We recorded. I think we recorded. And we subjected to the investigation. The folk varieties also have certain genetic basis. Right? They also done all this modern studies, and they have also probably match with what the tribes classified. As I told you already, only Honeybee is the organization that is run by Anil Gupta. His organization only has some kind of code of ethics. Yes, you all know this lady. In fact, next to the Linnaeus, from Indian perspective, this lady should have been the person who should have been given importance, Dr. E.K. Janaki. And every subject has a father. Ethnobotany has a mother, right? She is the mother of ethnobotany in India, right? And somehow we fail to recognize her in our studies. I don't know how many textbooks deal with her life, and her contributions to ethnobotany. She is one of the very great ethnobotanists from India, from southern India particularly. We fail to give the due recognition to her, right? She doesn't even appear in many of the ethnobotanical texts, the name. Yeah. This is a great man, Anil Gupta. Anil Gupta from IIM, Indian Institute of Management. He is the person who developed first code of ethics for India. And he insists on that. For his own researches, he insists on that. Wherever he goes, he speaks on that. Right? So we don't even bring to mention in our textbooks about these people. Right? We mention only a few popular personalities. Popularity doesn't mean they are true personalities. I think I'll quickly go through, yes. Yes. There are some publications, of course, which mostly me and my student are part of this publication. Our idea of ethnobotany is brought into these publications. Instead of telling everywhere, we just made some publications. Plant names and uses as indicators of traditional knowledge. How names itself can be an indicator. It is language and science. Names is language, and how it indicates is science. We combine language and science. Ecological elements of songs of Puraja and the ancient Tamils. We compared Sangam literature with the Puraja song. Puraja is a Orissa tribe. We compared these to how there are elements of Sangam literature in their songs. It's beautiful songs, folk songs. Relationship between four tribal communities and the natural resources of the Koraput. How their knowledge is relates to natural resource in the Koraput region. So we have to broaden our studies instead of typically looking at only from utility point of view. Socialization over fruits and vegetables. This is a market study done by my student. An excellent paper. Calendars and ecosystem management. Everyone speak about calendars. Here also should have calendar. Calendar of natural season, calendar of events, right? Not our typical calendars which we tear off every month or every day. That's one of the good paper. Of course, there are also other things which I'll quickly. This is important. This is a natural calendar of a particular tribe, Mawanaga tribe in Manipur. What this speaks about is very interesting. Once upon a period of time, everybody has a knowledge about the growing seasons, when to sow a crops, when to harvest a crop. So all this agricultural methodology is well known to the people. Suddenly, for some reason, for some decades or some centuries, people have forgotten this. And there is no male member who is knowledgeable about these calendars. And the traditional rule is, though women know, they cannot come to the forefront and share the knowledge. Right? It's also the gender issue that comes there. When some men gathered and discussing these things, we don't know how to sow, we don't know all these practices, we have lost our memory, so we don't know how to survive now. All these discussions are going on. The woman was hearing it inside the home. And she must tell them that I know, I can teach you, but she cannot. So she came out with a novel way of teaching, where she sang a lullaby to the child that she is actually making her to sleep. In that lullaby, She puts every information and sung not to the child, in fact, to the community members. This triggered their knowledge, and how they regained this knowledge, they started practicing it. So this is an actual information that from field. So this is the kind of ethnobotany we should be doing, right? How beautifully local practice comes into your thesis. Leave alone what level it goes to the next, right? Of course, he went beyond and developed his own calendar, modern calendar, with the events, the present day events, and changed the calendar to a slightly to update it, right? So that is something which is very important in our studies. We don't look into such aspects. Okay. I think I'll skip this alien plants. Everybody talks about alien plants. How do they come into our medicinal practices? In fact, I got a shock of my research when I was looking into actual literature from North America, North American plants and their medicinal uses. In North American plants, there are very few information about the medicinal uses that we know of the plants which are used here. But how did the medicinal uses appear? We have developed it here. So that means plant resource is different and knowledge is different. That's the case. So to whom you will attribute to IPR? Thank you. Yeah, yes.
Or a perception of this ethnobotany term. Thank you, first of all, for giving a different perception and a correct perception to the term ethnobotany.
Yeah, I got what you said.
But as far as we have perceived it, it seems to be correct from your. When you say that now the private knowledge is given to the public domain, so in that aspect, in this study of ethnobotany, how do the tribals get benefited? So is there any ways for that, so that tribals also get benefited other than their acknowledgement?
I know. It is not happening in a big way in India. But whereas else in South America and North America, it is happening in a very good way. Because they enter into agreements. That's why we never had any agreements from any of the Indian research institutions or Indian universities or Indian colleges. We never have it. Is Goa University have an agreement with any of the tribe? We don't have. Right? We think that knowledge is we take it to granted that knowledge is for free. That's our attitude. So that's a situation when we don't mention even a person who has shared the knowledge. How do you share the benefit? For sharing a benefit, you should know the person. How do you share the benefit? NBA has certain norms. Those norms are based on entire thing, not to a particular person. In a community, it maybe goes in the name of community, but the entire community may not have the knowledge. Maybe only few specified person have the knowledge. So our knowledge sharing and benefit sharing should be refined much, much finer. We are yet to evolve. But at least we have started somewhere. We are not fully into this. And we don't have any models in India that where actually the tribals have benefited from knowledge sharing. We don't have models. That's the present scenario.
And the second thing is, what is stopping for developing this code of ethics in India?
Only we. Nobody else. No other process. Only we. We have to be conscious. We have to be ethical. Right? When we open somebody else, your neighborhood notebook and make down a certain point, there you have to think, am I doing the right thing? You may be your good friend, but it is not your notes. It is somebody else's notes. That's what we do. We are unethical. Right? That unethicalness in our every part of life, whether in the research or anywhere, we are unethical. We should acknowledge that. We should agree to that. There may be few, we are very good, very ethical, but not many.
So actually now, Goa University, we have formed a human ethics committee. So recently, the past, at least in a year, we are practicing for research, anything involving these kind of things. They have to get an ethical approval from the committee, and the state level committee is also there now.
Yeah, but Dr. Krishnan, the Human Ethics Committee is generally for a different purpose. When animal models are involved, when other things are involved. So this, even I have formed an ethics committee in MCC. That is only for medical research or applied research with regard to human communities. For example, you are using blood samples for a research in different communities. So there you need to understand how many blood samples you can actually draw and how do you store these blood samples. After research, how do you destroy the blood samples? You cannot keep the blood samples in the refrigerator for a long time, right? Then it may lead to misuse. How do you destroy these samples? All these things are the possible problem of human committees. But unfortunately, this human ethics committee don't go into the issues that I spoke about.
Yeah.
They never develop a guideline. It is only to govern and guide researchers in these issues. That's the problem. That is totally different purpose.
Yeah, slowly they're involving the social science research also.
It is good if it evolves.
Yeah.
That's what I said. Let it evolve from Goa University as a first model.
Yes.
Let Goa University bring out a first model. I'll be very, very happy.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, very nice lecture. Well, I was thinking about the documentation of medicinal plants, uses of plants. Now, the purpose for me is to save the knowledge for posterity, because whatever the information that is there with the locals, I won't say tribals, may not last long, because the present generation, they're not interested in medicinal plants. So the whole purpose is, the aim is to save it for posterity, because people can work, people can have these things, they have that knowledge documented so that they can work and do research. We talk about bioprospecting.
Sir, my question in this is, who are we to worry about loss of their knowledge? Right. It is in our selfish view. We are selfish that their knowledge is going to be useful to us, not to them much. Right? Who are we to worry about this? Let it die. And the knowledge is like that. The knowledge is like that. Knowledge never is the same at any given point of time. Knowledge is dynamic. Knowledge is not static. It evolves. Like, for example, a few centuries ago, we had a lot of knowledge in the society. Do we have all of them now? It evolves. Something is forgotten, something is changed, something comes new. All this is possible in the knowledge dynamics. But knowledge dynamics should be respected. We cannot preserve it as a museum specimen. So like in the present state, we have certain types of knowledge. Okay, let's preserve it. That means when we do that, it doesn't evolve further. It should be naturally evolving. So I think we forget this aspect of dynamism in the knowledge. So that is given importance.
This knowledge has come after thousands of years.
Yes, but our thousands of years are not without change. It has changed everywhere, every now and then.
Yeah, but losing this knowledge,
we will not lose it. It will reappear in some form. We will never lose it. We think it's our fear. In a way, it's our selfish fear. We will not lose it.
because that is going to help humanity, and if we lose it, then it's a great loss.
No. It will help humanity, Dr. Rodriguez. It is not something without isolating humanity. It will help humanity. Problem is, we need not bother too much about their losing the knowledge. And in fact, we are not bothered about their losing knowledge. We are losing the benefits. That is where our selfishness comes from. But in fact, knowledge will reappear. At every community it has appeared. If you look at the community patterns of knowledge, at every now and then, it comes with modifications. It is not the same thing. When you preserve it, when you document it and when you preserve it, it is just the same pattern. We don't want same patterns. Knowledge, the communities also don't want same patterns. They want new things to come. They want the modifications to come. And it has happened in several ways. So, and that dynamism should be understood. Without understanding the dynamism, we want to preserve it as a museum specimen. So that is a problem. Right. I'm talking from a totally different perspective.
But see, if you see the even the plants, like the crop plants, we have identified like rice and wheat, which is so. I mean, you cannot imagine this when you compare it with jackfruits and mangoes, but still that has been saved.
Yes. In rice, how many varieties of rice we have lost?
We have lost a number of.
How many varieties have reappeared after some time? The way some farmer in some corner, keeping a few seeds.
But that loss has been a great loss because we have lost the important germplasm. We have lost the important traits.
It is not completely lost, sir. It may be there in some part of community, some corner of community. It is there. It will come up again when there is a need. See, there are large number of communities who keep these germplasm for future use. I have seen in Collie Hills, there is always a field germplasm, there is always a farm germplasm and probably store germplasm. The stored germplasm is something very different from what is in the field. So these two are different dynamics and different relationship. But it is not the same.
But when it gets extinct, can it come back?
It will come back.
I don't think
It will come back. Don't worry. It will come back. I've seen it in field, in practice, at least with regard to the millets. It will come back. Several millets have reappeared. We don't know from where, suddenly. Maybe one farmer, even with a handful of seeds, it can make reappearance.